On October 12, 2019, Professor Daniel Harper stayed late to record a lecture. Westbridge University's Humanities building was nearly empty by 8:40 p.m. He preferred it that way. Clean acoustics. No interruptions. Just his voice and the room. He taught cognitive perception. How the brain misreads reality. Optical illusions. False memories. Auditory hallucinations. That night's topic was auditory pareidolia. Hearing meaning in noise. At 8:52 p.m., he placed a recorder on the lectern and clipped a lav mic to his collar. Audio check. 1, 2. The room returned a soft echo. Room 314 was built for clarity. Tiered seating. Acoustic panels. He began. At 9:14 p.m., he asked a rhetorical question. If the brain is wired to find patterns, what happens when it finds one that isn't there? He paused. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then continued speaking and finished at 9:37 p.m. Nothing unusual happened. Security logs confirmed he was the only person on that floor. The anomaly wasn't discovered until the next afternoon. In his office, wearing headphones, Harper reviewed the file. He adjusted levels. Then he reached 9:14. If the brain is wired to find patterns, what happens when it finds one that isn't there? 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then, a voice answered. It listens back. Harper froze. He didn't remember saying that. The tone was calm, lower than his. Closer. He replayed it. The waveform showed a second vocal layer overlapping his silence. Clean, intentional. Single microphone input. He leaned back slowly. This wasn't distortion. It was a response. And it was spatially wrong. His own voice sounded a few feet from the mic. The second voice sounded nearer, as if someone had leaned beside him. He returned to room 314 that evening to test it again. The hall was empty. He set the recorder down. Pressed record. Asked the same question. If the brain is wired to find patterns, what happens when it finds one that isn't there? He waited. 5 seconds. 10. Silence. Relief settled in. He stopped recording. Went home. At 11:32 p.m. Alone in his study, he played the new file. The question. The pause. 5 seconds. 10. Then a whisper. Quieter. Closer. It waits. The waveform showed it clearly. So close, it nearly clipped the microphone. And this time, he had been alone. Professor Harper didn't report the recording. He tried to disprove it. The next morning, he brought the recorder to the media lab. The technician ran diagnostics. Firmware current. No corruption. No hidden tracks. No wireless interference. Single input. Harper asked if radio bleed could form a sentence. Not like that, the technician said. Not a direct reply. That evening, Harper redesigned the test. No lav mic. Recorder alone on the lectern. He stood 10 feet away. At 9:14 p.m., he called out. If the brain is wired to find patterns, what happens when it finds one that isn't there? His voice sounded thin at that distance. He did not approach the recorder. He waited. 10 seconds. Nothing. He stopped the session and went home. In his study, he played the file. The question sounded distant. Then silence. 10 seconds. 15. Then a soft breath, not from across the room. From the microphone, close enough to carry texture. Then a whisper. You're closer. Harper froze. He had not moved. The waveform showed it clearly. A second vocal layer. Stronger than his distant voice. Spatially impossible. He replayed it slower. No distortion. No digital tearing. The consonants were controlled. He checked hallway security footage from 9 to 10 p.m. No entries. No exits. No movement. The next night, he changed the variable again. He left the recorder running in the empty lecture hall. No speech. No question. He waited outside the building in his car, watching the lit windows of room 314. At 9:14 p.m., his phone vibrated. Audio spike detected. He did not enter. He drove home before listening. 9 minutes of room tone. Air circulation. Structural settling. Then at 9:14, a chair leg scraped faintly, followed by a voice. Clear. Measured. Ask it again. Harper felt the pattern shift. The voice wasn't reacting anymore. It was anticipating, timing itself to 9:14. The same minute he had first asked the question. He reopened the original recording. At 9:14, beneath his pause, he noticed something new. Breathing. Very close. Not after the question. Before it. As if whoever spoke had already been there, listening. Professor Harper stopped asking the question. He stayed away from room 314 for 3 days. Instead, he studied the audio. Not for words. For distance. Every sound carries space inside it. Walls leave signatures. Rooms breathe through reverb. His own voice matched the room perfectly. The second voice did not. There was almost no reflection. No echo tail. It sounded dry, intimate, as if spoken inches from the microphone. Closer than anyone would stand. In the second test, when he stood 10 feet away, the unknown voice still registered stronger than his. That meant one of two things. Someone approached the recorder, or proximity was being measured differently. He enhanced the breathing from the first night, slowed it down. It began 4 seconds before he asked the question. Too steady to be his, meaning it had already been there. On the 4th night, he changed the variable again. He left the recorder running in the empty lecture hall. But at 9:14 p.m., he asked the question from home. Alone in his study, he spoke normally. If the brain is wired to find patterns, what happens when it finds one that isn't there? Miles away, room 314 remained empty. At 9:14 p.m., his phone vibrated. Audio spike detected. He waited until morning to listen. The file began with room tone. HVAC hum. Structural settling. Then, fabric shifting. Close to the microphone. Followed by breathing. Slow. Measured. Then the voice. Clear. You don't have to be there. Harper felt the implication settle in. It wasn't about the room. It wasn't about the building. He replayed the final seconds. Beneath the voice, barely audible, a chair creaking, paper brushing lightly. Not in room 314. In a smaller space. He removed his headphones slowly. The silence in his study felt different. Contained. He zoomed in on the waveform's final moment. After the breathing faded, there was one more sound. A soft exhale. Then 3 words. Closer than before. Not in the lecture hall. Behind him. Ask it again. Professor Harper did not turn around. He remained seated at his desk, headphones on, staring at the frozen waveform. Behind him, the study was silent. He told himself the final words were bleed through. Expectation-shaping noise. He removed the headphones. The room felt smaller. He checked the door. Locked. Windows sealed. He replayed the final 10 seconds through speakers. The breath. The exhale. Ask it again. Without headphones. The voice felt unplaced. Not behind him. Not in front. Just present. He opened a new recording session on his computer. Internal microphone only. Is anyone there? Silence. He let it run for a minute. Playback revealed nothing unusual. Just room tone. He tried again. Same result. For the first time in days, he felt control returning. The anomaly was tied to room 314. To the recorder. Not to him. He slept. At 2:14 a.m., his phone vibrated. Audio spike detected. He stared at the screen. The recorder in room 314 had been powered off. He was certain. The app showed the device inactive. Yet a new file appeared. Timestamp: 2:14 a.m. Duration: 18 seconds. He opened it. The recording began with silence. No HVAC hum. No room signature. Then, a slow intake of breath. Close. Fabric shifting near the mic. Then the voice. Steady. You're recording. The file ended. Metadata confirmed the same device ID. No remote activation logged. Before sunrise, Harper drove to campus. Security reported no overnight access. Room 314 was unchanged. The recorder sat where he had left it, powered down. He picked it up. The casing felt slightly warm. He stood alone in the lecture hall. He didn't ask the question. He didn't speak. He just listened. The silence pressed inward. And somewhere beneath it, there was breathing. Professor Harper stopped running experiments. He stopped asking questions. He even stopped checking the recorder. But he didn't remove it from room 314. He left it on the lectern, powered down, facing the empty seats. Days passed. No new files appeared. No notifications. The silence should have felt reassuring. It didn't. He returned to teaching. Avoided the topic of auditory perception. Avoided mentioning patterns. But he began noticing something subtle during lectures. When he paused, the room no longer felt empty. Not visually. Not physically. Acoustically. There was a weight to the silence. As if the space between sounds had texture. One afternoon, mid-sentence, he stopped speaking. He hadn't planned to. He simply lost the thread of his thought. The students waited. The room held still. And for a fraction of a second, he heard breathing. Not loud. Not directional. Just present. He continued the lecture as if nothing had happened. That night, at home, he reviewed his class recording. He didn't remember starting the recorder. Yet there it was, time-stamped automatically. The lecture played normally. His voice steady. Students shifting in their seats. Then the moment he paused, the audio flattened. Ambient noise dipped unnaturally low. Then, breathing, layered beneath the silence. Not from the back row, not near the mic, inside the signal itself. He leaned closer to his speakers. At very low volume. Another detail emerged. A faint movement of air, followed by a whisper, almost conversational. You're learning. Harper turned off the playback. He did not check behind him this time. He did not analyze the waveform. Instead, he sat in the quiet of his study, listening. There is a principle in cognitive science. The brain seeks patterns to survive. When it finds one, it reinforces it, even if the pattern is wrong. Harper had asked what happens when the brain finds meaning in noise. Now he considered the inverse. What happens when the noise finds meaning in you? He stopped bringing devices into room 314, stopped recording lectures entirely. But the pattern didn't require equipment anymore. At 9:14 p.m., each night, wherever he was, the silence shifted, subtle, predictable, like a held breath. He never asked the question again. He didn't need to. Because sometimes Just before the minute changed, something asked it for him. And somewhere in the quiet that followed, there was always an answer, waiting.